Members of the commission, we're now live.
Good evening and welcome to the October 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Jeffrey Haynes and I will be chairing the meeting tonight. I would now like to ask the commissioners and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Commissioner Sandra Prather.
Mark Dominiani.
Harley Bond.
Commissioner Nasser is online. Commissioner Nasser?
Yes, this is Zara Nasser, Commissioner Nasser.
This is Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff. Devin Murtha, Historic Preservation Staff, is also joining us.
Laura DiPasquale, Historic Preservation Staff.
And Dan Bruckert, Historic Preservation Staff, remotely.
Great, thank you. The first item on our agenda this evening are the historic area work permits. Have the work permits been duly advertised?
Yes, they were advertised in the October 8th edition of the Washington Times.
Very well, thank you. If there's anyone here to testify for any of the cases, please give a speaker form to the staff and they will let us know that you are here to address one of the cases. We are going to begin by expediting the cases we believe can be expedited based on the staff reports. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to case 1A at 7115 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park, 1B at 7215 Spruce Avenue, Tacoma Park, case 1D at 2500 Holman Avenue, Silver Spring, case 1E at 17 West Irving Street, Chevy Chase, case 1F, 7130 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park, case 1G at 312 Tulip Avenue, Tacoma Park, case 1I at 507 Albany Avenue, Tacoma Park, and 1J at 10212 and 10206 Montgomery Avenue, Kensington.
Mr. Chairman, hearing none, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with the staff reports based upon the record before us and in consideration of recommendations of the local advisory panel and including the conditions recommended by the staff. Number 1A, HOP number 1132226 at 7115 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park. Item 1B, HOP number 1132286 at 7215 Spruce Avenue, Tacoma Park. Item 1D, HOP number 1097561, revision at 2500 Holman Avenue, Silver Spring. Item number 1E, HOP number 1064778, revision, 17 West Irving Street, Chevy Chase. Item number 1F, HOP number 1115772 at 7130 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park. Item number 1G, HOP number 1134380 at 312 Tulip Avenue, Tacoma Park. Number 1I, HOP number 1135035 at 507 Albany Avenue, Tacoma Park. And item number 1J, HOP number 1032588, revision number 2 at 10212 and 10206 Montgomery Avenue, Kensington.
Do I have a second?
I second.
That is Commissioner Prather seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. This is Commissioner Nasser, aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
And that was Commissioner Kaplan. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously, so that those cases are all approved. If you have any questions, you can speak with staff tomorrow during regular business hours. We appreciate your work to preserve your properties and in working with staff to submit easily approvable work permits. We are going to adjust the order of the agenda tonight. We are going to move to item 3 on the agenda tonight. This is the minutes from October 8th. Has anybody read the minutes and would like to make a motion
Mr. Chair, I actually read the minutes, and I would make a motion that we approve as written the minutes from the October 8th, 2025 meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Dominiani. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 That is unanimous, and so the minutes of October 8th, 2025 are approved. We will now move on to Commission Item 4, which is the approval of the HPC calendar of meeting dates for 2026. I believe each of the commissioners have been issued the calendar. So I will make a motion that we approve the HPC calendar meeting dates for 2026. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays, abstentions? The ayes have it, and that is approved. Okay. We will now circle back to preliminary consultations. The first case we'll hear tonight is Case 2A at 23200 Stringtown Road, Clarksburg. Do we have a staff report? Dan, are you with us?
Let's give him a moment. He was here. We do have the staff report. We have the presentation. One moment. We're going to try and get Dan back on the call. Just a second. Okay. Dan?
Yep.
Okay,
Are we ready to roll?
we're ready to roll.
Okay. Good evening, Dan Bruckert for the record. This is our third preliminary consultation for an infill project at 23200 Stringtown Road in Clarksburg. Go to the next slide. So the Day House, a contributing resource to the Clarksburg Historic District, is part of the subject property. It was constructed circa 1925. This project is to be reviewed under the Clarksburg Historic District Amendment, Division of Clarksburg, Montgomery County Code Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation. So the applicant proposes to construct the Clarksburg branch of the county library system. The library will be approximately 20,000 square feet with 8,000 square feet of parking below. They'll extend Clarks Ridge Road into the existing right-of-way. And it'll be approximately 450 feet of length, and construct other site improvements, including to the Day House, which is the image you see in front of you. So just to familiarize yourself with the site a little bit, these images are along Frederick Road, looking across the street to the Day House and the subject property behind. And then this is looking from the southwest towards the subject property across the intersection. You see Stringtown Road on the right, which is a 4-lane divided road, which will provide access to the library building. Next slide. And then these are images looking, and the left image is looking across the street towards the site. And then the image on the right is looking west on the multi-use path And you can see the curb cut for Clarksridge Road in the sort of mid-ground of that photo. Next slide. And then lastly, the image on the right is the curb, again, the existing cut for Clarksridge Road. And then the image in the lower left is actually looking onto the site. You can see it's largely undeveloped. It sort of lost its agricultural character and has a variety of native and invasive species on it. Next slide. So as part of the adoption of the Clarksburg Historic District, the Division of Clarksburg was adopted a couple of years later. This is an analysis of Clarksburg identifying character defining features, including recognizing the historic core and identifying a buffer area to create a more graceful transition between the historic and the new. And as part of that plan, the Clarksburg Town Center area was already identified. Again, it's also to maintain building setbacks, the directional expression of buildings, and the relationships of front yard setbacks and building spacing. So each of the prior preliminary consultations have focused on a limited subset of the project. In this case, we're going to evaluate the design revisions presented for the proposed library, the area between the library and the day house, and general feedback regarding the appropriateness of the materials proposed. So the HPC's evaluation of the library's design and materials will ensure that the construction satisfies the objectives outlined in the vision and is compatible with the overall character of the Clarksburg Historic District. Now, taking a step back, the first preliminary consultation was to evaluate an appropriate location for the library. The HPC uniformly supported the construction of the library on the subject property, and commissioners presented unanimous support for the proposed location fronting Stringtown Road. The commissioner stressed that the massing of the library would be vital so it didn't loom over the day house. One commissioner stated that the day house needed room to breathe as part of that. And the commissioners encouraged the applicant to include more interior site circulation between the day house and the library. Go to the next slide. Additionally, Commissioner questioned the ability of adding vehicular access from Maryland 355, which is Frederick Road. Commissioners encouraged a cleaning up of the corner of Maryland 355 and Stringtown Road to remove some of the visual clutter and make the day house more visible as one enters the historic district. Again, this is at the southern boundary of the historic district. And commissioners remain concerned that the day house would not be a priority for the county and encouraged the applicant team to consider a use that could be programmed to operate in tandem with the library or utilize some library function out of the day house. And the second preliminary consultation evaluated the massing and height of the building. And the commissioners found that the overall height of the proposed library appropriate and finding that it would not tower over the day house. Specific comments related to the mass included the recommendation to include more articulation, especially on the west elevation, which is the closest to the day house. Pushing the massing of the western portion of the library away from Stringtown Road to provide more visibility of the day house, and shifting the massing of the stacks area northward to create a more open space or plaza in front of the library. And in fact, shifting both of those areas to the north would effectively just push the library building back from Stringtown Road. One commissioner stated they did not see a relationship between the proposed fenestration and the larger Clarksburg Historic District. Next slide, please. So again, this preliminary consultation is primarily to focus on the design of the building and provide feedback. But as part of this, the revisions have included relocating the entrance to the southwest corner of the building, which is the corner closest to the day house. So as you see in the site plan, the stair tower and elevators remain in the same location, but the entrance has changed and the location of some of the meeting rooms has changed as well. So we'll touch on this a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So again, the applicant provided a series of renderings. You see the previous submission in the upper right with the centrally located entrance. The revised design in the lower left drops the parapet. The entrance is in the southwest corner. So you have a little more articulation closer to the day house, and the overall height of the library is reduced on that portion of the building. Next slide, please. Additional renderings show the building and its relationship with the day house and the proposed improvements between the two buildings. And we can come back to these at any time. Next slide, please. And then we had, they're identified as elevations, but we have perspective drawings of all four elevations of the building. Next slide, please. And then again, the overall site, you can see the curb cut for Clarks Ridge Road extended sort of in the upper half. And then the rest of the circulation for the library will be accessed from the rear. We can go to the next slide. So the applicant provided additional renderings of proposals for the day house, including access from the rear through the plaza. The existing rear porch is enclosed. You see that as a concept in the first two slides, on the first two images on the left and the center. And then on the right, they've opened up the rear porch and provided access to the rear through there. The rehabilitation of the day house has been identified as phase 2 in the plans. And as the applicants have stated previously, there isn't funding in this project to include the rehabilitation of the day house. So go to the next slide, please. The applicant provided a slide showing some of the proposed materials, which include a variety of aluminum paneling systems, including a wood embossed or wood printed texture on aluminum plank cladding, aluminum composite panels, ribbon windows, and additional vertical siding. So staff finds that the overall design retains the same features as the earlier submissions. The primary change to this design being the change in the entrance location. The new entrance location does help improve the potential relationship between the library and the day house, should those buildings work in tandem. Lowering the parapet along the western elevation helps to lower the height and apparent mass of the building closest to the day house. And staff finds that the lack of annotated elevation drawings prevents more extensive comments. Go to the next slide, please. Staff finds that the proposed plaza between the library and the day house will improve circulation between the two buildings. And based on the HPC's policy on substitute porch flooring and decking, a compatible substitute material may be used. The identified Trex is not considered a compatible substitute material, and the staff report directs the applicant to consult with staff or review the policy for more information about what would be considered a compatible substitute material. Generally, staff finds the proposed materials are incompatible with the surrounding district. Staff is particularly concerned about the reflectivity of the proposed metal materials and their compatibility with the rural character of the surrounding district. So the primary questions for the HPC during tonight's hearing are what is the HPC's position on the changes to the library's front entrance location and its design, the appropriateness of the revised design of the space between the library and the day house, and the compatibility of the identified materials, including any recommended revisions and other materials that would aid the HPC in making their final determination. And then finally, staff identified a list of materials at the end of the staff report that should be submitted as part of a future submission, included annotated elevation drawings of all four sides of the proposed buildings. We've only seen renderings at this point. We haven't seen scaled elevation drawings. Additionally, any additional renderings that are presented should be drawn to scale and eliminate opaque and translucent trees to allow better visibility of the building and its site work. Additional information about the construction of Clarks Ridge Road, including any grading details, road sections, and other detailed design information should be submitted. Details on the rehabilitation of the day house included an updated and accurate landscape plans, including dimensions and materials. Those may be part of a phase 2, but should be submitted in due time. Physical material samples should be submitted for the HPC's evaluation, and then any other material requested by the HPC should be submitted. And with that, I will answer any questions that you have.
Do any of the commissioners have a question for staff? Commissioner Bond.
Yes, thank you. It would be really helpful as a new commissioner if you could explain the buffer area for this particular historic district, what that means.
So this is the only historic district, I believe, that has an identified buffer area. This was created as part of the Clarksburg plan, which adopted the Clarksburg area plan, which included the creation of the Clarksburg Town Center. So when that was adopted and the town center location to sort of the northwest of the historic core of Clarksburg was identified, the objective was to create some sort of transition area between the historic core and what they called the buffer area. Now, all of this is designated historic, so they all have to adhere to, the directives in the vision and in the Clarksburg master plan, in addition to 24A and the standards. I don't know if that helps at all, but again, this is, I think, the only district that has this, and it doesn't say, it just identifies a transition area, but doesn't direct the HPC on how to apply that in future applications.
This is Rebecca Ballo. I'll add to that as well that it does not talk about the buffer area as having necessarily lesser standards in terms of compatibility for the district. It does just talk about identifying the core and then the buffer, and then there was more intensive development that had been master planned for the better part of 20 years that has largely been built out. You can see it up in Clarksburg outside of the buffer area, but the Secretary of the Interior standards still apply. A number of the other provisions that are in the vision of Clarksburg in terms of massing, directionality, proportion, and materials also still apply within the buffer area. Just as some additional background.
Anyone else? If not, then I will ask the applicants to come forward.
This may take just a second, Chair Haynes. The applicants are going to be joining the Teams meeting and presenting out their presentation from there. Is that right, Antonia? That's correct. Okay, so we'll just need just a minute for them to join us in Teams and get set up.
Thank you.
So we'll stop sharing the staff computer.
Let me see here.
We're just waiting. I'll let you know when Antonio's joined the meeting and we're good to go. Okay. Antonio will ask you to turn off your camera and then share out your screen.
Okay. I need to load 1 second.
Okay.
Bear with me. Okay, I got it. Okay, I think I am ready here. I'm just going to turn this into presentation mode.
If you are ready, then if you would identify yourself for the record, and you will have 7 minutes plus or minus.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Antonio Rebello. I am an architect the partner at Grimm Parker Architects and Director of Design there. And thank you for having us here tonight. We are ready to show you what we have been working on since we saw each other in September. Before we get going, I just wanted to show you, because there was a question last time about fire and rescue and emergency vehicles. And so we just created a little graphic just to show you how these vehicles would come to the library. Most of the times they would be coming through Stringtown Road, so that would serve the front and the west side of the building, as well as to go to the back. Both ambulances and fire trucks would use the Clarks Ridge Road and just go in the back end that way. So if you have any further questions, well, we can go about it later on. But thank you. All right, so one of the major takeaways from our last meeting in September was to provide a better connection between the library and the historic house. Several suggestions were made on how to possibly achieve that, and we took all of that to heart and went back and studied several options on what we heard from you. As a result, we are happy to be back with significant revisions to the building massing, to the floor plan, to the site plan, and even propose some options for improving the rear of the historic house. For starters, we literally moved the main street entrance of the library from the middle of the massing to the corner of the building, closest to the historic house, which immediately orients the library entrance towards the intersection of 355 and Stringtown Road. And most importantly, it helps sponsor a real connection with the historic house through how we treat the interstitial space between the two buildings, which were things that I think everybody desired. It may seem simple to do a move like that, but actually it's quite complex to have done that change by moving the meeting rooms, but we achieved it both in both floors of the building. Last time when we met, this was the site plan that you saw, and it showed clearly the main entrance being in the middle, and also showed the historic house being separated from the library with a service drive, which we discussed at some length. And we discussed also how these two buildings could connect better with each other. So tonight, we are coming here with a revised site plan that clearly shows how we listen to your comments. And we actually did a lot of different variations of this, including splitting the massing at one point to break even more that massing in the front, but it would cause such a ripple with the parking below that that was just not possible. So the current plan shows an approach, a phased approach, a phase one and phase two. And the way we're showing it, the improvements to the day house would be considered for a later date at a phase two, like Dan pointed out. This plan shows how we are connecting with a plaza that is built with just natural vegetation and becomes a garden between these two buildings. But because of the shape of the sidewalks and the way we are connecting it, clearly creates a visual connection between these two spaces. Another thing we did was provide a direct connection to the garage underneath the building for able-bodied folks that can come up the steps and go directly to the day house. Obviously, folks who cannot do that will still have the elevators of the library to come up and go on the front of the building. You saw this last time where the main character showed the entrance in the middle. Today, we're coming back here with this approach of moving this corner, this entrance to the corner as such. So we are proposing the connection, the actual connection to the day house to have this kind of porch-like idea or boardwalk or so to differentiate the old building from the new. As a matter of, and also from a practical thing to not incur a lot of weight on that fragile foundation of that old building with actual sidewalk and concrete and all that nearby. We have been studying these elevations since then. One thing that we have not yet been able to achieve, which is a mandate by the county, is to get enough solar panels on this roof to get to 100% net zero. And so with that, we are continuing studying this roof and the shapes there. And we are moving towards having to perhaps elongate a little bit that overhang in front of the building so that the solar panels can actually achieve 100%, which we have. But anyway, the current design is as you see it here. Just to close on this part of the presentation, we looked also at the day house, and we understand that portion at the back with the windows is really not historic and not contributing, but removing it altogether would leave a huge scar on that building. So with that, we thought, okay, there are some options. We can remove that stair. We can introduce this path that also makes the building accessible in an ADA compliant, and we can keep the back that way and connected. We can create a deck in the back for amenities, or we can actually open it up and make a porch out of it. So then touched on the intent of the materials. These materials have to be very durable, but they will look and feel like wood. They will not, unlike what's described, have reflectivity. These materials are very close to what the original elements are. And to conclude, the last slide, we are proposing a decking, which may not be Trex, could be another material. We will take the advice of the staff on that. And you can see the natural landscaping in the concrete walk. Thank you so much for that. I also have a 3D model that if you'd like, we can fly around that if you wish or not. It's up to you. Thanks.
I think I'd like to see the 3D model. Yes?
Just a quick note, Chair Haynes, in addition to the model, I just want to clarify that there's been no determination made by the HPC or the staff that any portions of the day house are not contributing. It is a contributing structure within the district.
I thought we heard that last time, but maybe I'm wrong, so it's okay.
Thank you for clarification.
Yeah, thanks.
And yes, we'd like to see your 3D model.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if it opened up. It looks like it is open. Okay, great. So this is an aspect at the ground level of the proposed sign. Let's take a stroll over here. So the idea is to have the library connect to the day house. And so the thought here, it was to remove the concrete stoop stairs that are there, open up that wall that had the windows and all that, and create this element here that connects it and makes it ADA accessible, but also offers an option to go up or down to the garage entrance in that way. We also are looking at the elevations in terms of adding a little bit more variation on the west facade as it was requested. And we added this plaza that connects the two buildings to this aspect here. So that is where we are today. In terms of the solar panels, this configuration shows 100% solar panels. There are exactly 451 solar panels that are required for the loads that are needed for this building. And we can achieve it in this design. And that's that. You let me know if you want to see more things or if you have any questions.
Questions from the commissioners?
I was, something missing for me in this review today were renderings from grade, because this library is creating a new backdrop setting for the day house. So I'm very happy that you brought this 3D model.
Thank
So
you.
if you could just stop moving and go back to the street where you just were.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'd like for us to take a look at that, and if you could talk a little bit about how you feel the library is creating that backdrop, and if you could also move, I think this is Stringtown Road, so like at a view where we're looking at the front of the day house where you can see the library behind it. Yeah,
Maybe like this?
yeah, that's great.
Okay.
What if you moved a little further to the left?
To
The left in the view.
this left?
I guess it would be if you were that person to that person's right.
Yeah, this, like this?
No, the other way.
Like this.
Yeah, thank you.
We do think this building, the historic house, is a great gatekeeper, so to speak, of the historic district. And by being upgraded eventually and by being celebrated at the corner the way it is and having the library at the background, it's a great way to actually preserve that building and the spirit of the historic preservation for that particular structure.
Yeah, that's helpful, thank you.
Commissioner Dominiani.
Yes, this is Commissioner Damiani. I have a brief question for staff, which is Phase 2, which would involve upgrades or modifications to the day house. That would be a forthcoming HOP, is that correct? Not to be considered here?
This submission is the first time that staff has seen the day house called out as a Phase 2 versus a Phase 1, and that is a construct of the applicant.
Okay, got it.
So any comments that the commissioners have about the day house, it's all being treated as one project, as one HOP, and any comments you have about the required timing of any improvements to the day house and how that needs to work in conjunction with the permit approval for the library are entirely at your discretion.
Okay, got it. With that, then a follow-up question for the applicants. First, my gratitude, because I think that you've taken on board much of the feedback that we've presented thus far, and it's very great to see that, and we can deliberate, I think, more a bit later. But then a question then, based on this Phase 1, Phase 2 construct, were you planning to complete this construction of the plaza, of the stairs to the parking garage, of the decking, et cetera, as part of this project now, or am I given to understand that's a future phase, a future HOP? The decking, et cetera, the changes to the porch are going to take place at a different time.
This is Randy Hawkins with Montgomery County Department of General Services. I'm a section chief. And I think that's an excellent question, because where does that exact line end? And I think we can incorporate almost everything in the circle, the sidewalk as it comes up and goes back behind the house. In this first one, whether we bring the sidewalk around into the front, we could make it part of this, or we could wait until we see what the actual tenant is of whether it ends up being a screen, a solid porch or an open porch. But we'd certainly like your feedback. Our general recommendation would be, to try to, wait for that decking area until Phase 2. That way we can get it exactly right, because who knows, maybe there's a 5-foot addition on the one spot for, whatever it might need to be, and we'd hate to tear something out that we, just put in.
Right. And in this scenario, I guess, would Phase 2 begin once the library construction is complete, or does it begin when sort of a tenant is identified? Or
Yeah, so our deputy director who's here is actively working on finding people for a use for the day house. So that the construction of the library wouldn't begin until late next year, so, and then it's going to take another 2 years. So we've got 3 years before the building's even open to try to identify somebody as soon as we can, but it's better to find the right fit than just a fit. So yeah, it's actively going, so, it could be tomorrow I get a call, hey, we know who's going in there, let's get that, submitted in for, its approval.
No, thank you for explaining. I think it's helpful for us to understand sequencing and
Yeah.
how it all fits together. So thank you.
Commissioner Prather.
I applaud the connected space. I definitely see an improvement from the September 17th meeting to this model. I also appreciate the removal of the service lane. Before it looked like there was not a relationship between the day house and the library. Didn't seem like it was respectful. Also, the use of the solar panels, the calculation, I appreciate that as well. I do have a question about distance traveled. Going back to the parking to the day house, I just would like to go back to understand for a wheelchair user, for example, what does that travel look like?
Sure. So we're showing actually in this model a person in a wheelchair, but if you would be coming to the day house, in order to come up to the actual level of that floor, we created this ADA access. We think the travel is really short because you would come out of the door, you go through the elevator, and then you let me show you in the plan. So you come out right there through that elevator, and then you just go through the door, and then you just go around this way and go into the day house in that manner. In terms of distance,
Also, so the ADA parking, so if you orient yourself right on where the two little elevators are, the ADA parking is right next to the elevators. So when you come in, you drive in, you park right next to the elevators, and you go straight up. So really, it's the shortest distance possible to raise yourself up 15 feet up to street level. So there's really no other way to get up there faster. I mean, it's literally, that parking space is right there is right, the van accessible one's right, the closest it can be to Stringtown Road. You hop in the elevator, you go straight up, and then right out the front door.
right.
So I think the distance between the back of the day house and the entrance to our building is around 40 feet, 30, 40 feet. And it was that balancing act of you don't want the building to be too close and you want enough breathing room. And I think the architects have done a great job trying to make, a nice rural kind of space in between rather than making a, really urban kind of space, that would, distract from both buildings.
So this is kind of like the travel from there to there. I hope that answered the question.
It has. I do have a follow-up comment. The positioning of the entrance on this new model is also definitely an improvement as it minimizes risk and falls and strollers and other ways to enter the building. It looked like the previous model had maybe 9 steps to the front door.
It had let's see, it had about 3 or so.
Really?
But it also had a ramp to go up. So
Okay, yeah.
we can look at the previous view here. You can see that there were like 3 or 4 steps here, but you can see it behind the bicycle. There's this path here that was the ADA path.
Okay.
We're taking advantage of the slope of the road, and so where we were higher, you can connect a ramp, and where we were lower, we put the steps. Yeah. But this is history now because we're actually over here now.
But I think your observation's on point, and I didn't think about it. You're not gonna have any strollers, falling down steps accidentally or anything, so.
Exactly.
Minimizes risk. This
it does.
new model does.
It does, yes, for sure.
This is Commissioner Haynes. Could we see the model from the eastern end of the library, kind of coming up the sidewalk?
This is, oh, the east, yes. Bear with me, because I'm only moving with the mouse here. But this is the library.
Certainly gives us an idea of how the grade falls away from the
Yeah,
street level.
sure.
And maybe just head towards the day house.
Sure.
That's good.
You want me to stop or keep going, or?
That's good. Stop. Maybe back up a little bit. And just trying to understand how the facade of the library, as we're approaching, how that relates not only to the day house, but to the experience of pedestrians, et cetera,
Right.
coming from the east.
I'm gonna put us in on the walk here.
Now, in this model, the top parapet continues and turns the corner over the entry, whereas in your elevation studies, it turns back.
Those were earlier. You are correct about that. We found that we needed the extra area to put those solar panels. That's the driver for that. So this one, it didn't have that, but then we couldn't achieve that. We were short. So we looked at many ways, and one way to minimize having panels that are, super visible or doing other crazy things, we thought, okay, let's just continue this in an elegant move and provide, it actually provides a little bit of shelter too, from the elements a little higher, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, when we were, we've been actively, like, every day getting into this building, and the technical details, are so intense, that aren't observed, and getting all of those, 451 solar panels on the roof was pretty tricky. And we intentionally left the corner open because we know one of the concerns was making sure we could see the day house through, and we think it actually kind of frames it. And that little kind of portico now, maybe that's stroller parking or, area where somebody's kind of waiting for somebody, out there. And it also adds, one of the other comments was that facade seemed empty. And we think now by adding those other vertical elements, like we did on the other end, gives it a little bit of depth, and a little bit of character. So we thought that was a good improvement.
It's not like we didn't want to submit the 2D elevations at the time. We have been working fast and furious, but we were not in time to actually put that into the submission. So we put where we were at the time with those 4 elevations in perspective renderings. But, until we got to the point where we could actually put the panels and do the math and make sure that everything is working. And so you're looking at that result right now.
And, so I think one of the comments was getting the detailed dimensional elevations. We think this is pretty reflective of what we'd want to go through next time, and we can go through and detail them out and get all the dimensions in there. And
What's
incorporate any
the
additional comments.
what's the little roof projection? Is that over the mechanical pit that I'm seeing in this south elevation?
That's a great question. That is only an armature for more solar panels that we are putting on top of the rooftop units. And our mechanical engineer is actually throwing a fit because they need enough ventilation for these units. And so we have to have a 6'2" minimum between the panels and the top of the units. And so when you do the math, we elevated it a little bit, and you see it in this configuration. It's not a structure, and we believe that it really is not visible. And so, but of course, if you do a 2D elevation, that thing shows up, so, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious more than anything. I don't
Sure.
think we'll see it from the street, per se.
Yeah.
How do you see this building relating to the kind of regional character of Clarksburg, in terms of its massing or use of materials, et cetera? How does this design, if it does, differentiate itself based on its location in Clarksburg, Maryland versus Salisbury, Maryland versus any other area? Is there any attempt to address regionalism in your design?
Yes, there is. And I am glad that you asked that question, especially when you mentioned Salisbury, for example. We believe that a building can be very contextual and be of its time as well. And the way that we are approaching has to do with the use of materials, for example, the color of those materials, the texture of those materials. When you walk in Clarksburg, what you see a variety of fairly modest homes, and they are mostly cladded with siding, and the siding for its majority is white. And the contrast is usually two colors. You have a white, you may have a black shutter, or you may have a wood shutter. You also see barns and structures around there. It is a modest historic area. There is one church that has one steeple. And so when you look at that, we felt that this building needed to be a quiet, calm building, not a super exuberant with tons of things happening to it. And with the color palette, that kind of goes in the same direction as what it exists there. Salisbury has a lot of brick. If this building was designed in Salisbury, most likely would end up being a brick building. And in many other areas the same way. So we believe that we don't need to be replicating historic details and on the facades in order to actually achieve a contextual response.
I would also like to add, the project manager for the project, John Chow, is here, and he's been going through a lot of the historic documents, vision of Clarksburg, the master plan, and getting a lot of that data and history from this area. And the intent is to try to incorporate some of that into the interiors, to where there's it's displays or it's murals on the walls and that kind of stuff as well. So it is something that we're interested in. There's quite a bit of interesting history.
Right.
And I believe at the last meeting, there was a suggestion of push and pull the mass.
Yeah.
I think I made that comment. What were your thoughts about that? Did you try that? And sometimes you got to show why it doesn't work.
The comment was well taken, and we actually did study that. What we were finding was it would fracture the plan in such a way that would cause a very large ripple to how things would actually function internally. I think the idea has validity, and it would be interesting, but it would have to be more than just a corner element. You would have to actually go as far back as maybe all those meeting rooms and break back, or even split the meeting rooms and a part of it goes back or forth. So we studied all that, and we were unable to actually reconcile.
Can you, if you would, sorry to interrupt, if you could go back to the floor plans?
Sure. Oh, sorry,
So-
this is the floor plan.
Yep,
This is it.
that's great, yep. So if the meeting rooms and the entrance, or maybe stated another way, if you left the meeting room and the entry where it was, but you push back the plan to the right of the meeting room to the back wall, or the interior wall of the meeting room, I should say, so that the meeting room and the entry are reading as a mass, and I guess the stacks part of the library is set back. And can then the meeting room and the entry take on a different height that would help relate to the day house? I mean, I think the overall height is, relates to the day house. I think they're probably pretty close in height, but it could, as the day house porch wraps around, and if we do another porch on the back, can the meeting room and the entry kind of pull that porch massing across at some height and have some differentiation there that brings the height of the building, particularly at the entry, down to a more pedestrian scale, and then let the taller stacks and the core, the elevated core stairs, that can be at the regular height that you have.
Yeah, we could lower this. This area over here, I think that it perhaps may go a little counterintuitively, where you see an entrance, you tend to come to a kind of a taller volume, and then you usually progress from that to a more compressed space, let's say to a corridor, and then you could go to the back to the stacks are. But all of these things, I think the suggestion is a good one. It depends on how we would do this. One difficulty that we, of course, have, again, which is a little bit of a driver for us, is the solar stuff, right? And if we start lowering the roofs and doing things of that nature, we start adding complexity and shade for those panels a little bit.
Well, you've got some space at the east end of this building that's open. Can you do some panels at grade? I mean, you got,
We have some stormwater management facilities on this side, and the task that we were given was to actually locate all of the panels on the roof of the building. But, technically, yes, you could put it at grade, yes, you could.
well, I would like to see you try that. I'd like to see a scheme where you give that a shot next time you come for a preliminary. And maybe we'll see it and say, yeah, you know what, not such a great idea. But I think it's worth trying, particularly as we look down the sidewalk, whether it's from the west or the east, you have what feels like a long facade relative to the day house, relative to the historic core of Clarksburg. And I think that's one way you can make this building relate a little bit better, if the entry and you have a program, the meeting rooms, that can become your scalable elements to the building. And I'd like to see that. I thought that's what I'd asked for last time, but maybe that wasn't clear. But I'd like to at least see a scheme, a sketch, and test it, if you will.
Okay.
And perhaps we'll come full circle on it, but at least you will have tried that, and I think it will, in my mind, relate to the scale of the historic district a bit better.
All right.
Just to get a bit of clarity, so you said the meeting rooms being a slightly lower massing, is that right? And then the entrance being a little lower and pushed back, is that right?
The pushback, maybe not, but
I think the
incorporate it.
entry and the meeting room
Connect.
together could be forward, and it could be lower. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know if in this current design, it looks like the entry for it is a double height space.
It's a 1.5 because this is
One-
not really
1.5,
a-
right.
a
So-
two-story space.
I see it now, yeah.
Yeah.
But let's try lowering that and allowing the main portion of the library to push back.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions for the applicant? No, Commissioner, sorry, let's,
Press this button or
yes, please press the button there.
light comes on?
Yep, Commissioner
And then
Kaplan.
just bring the mic up a little bit closer.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yep, that's great.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of follow up on the discussion about some of the design and how it relates to the day house and to the district. And right now, I'm not really seeing a lot of consistency. Just looking at some specifics, if we're looking at the vision, Clarksburg vision, it specifically calls out, for example, the facades of historic houses in Clarksburg tend to be horizontally emphasized in composition, generally tended to be more horizontal than vertically oriented. And I'm just seeing a lot of vertical elements throughout the structure. You know, just the cladding and even the kind of the scoring on the back and all these kind of wood features. Talks about roof forms being generally gable or hipped. And I agree, you don't want to have so many historic features that you're mimicking or trying to recreate a building that's 100 years old. But I feel like you should have some consistent elements that kind of call out the district. You know, because, and there are some things you need to have. You want to get light in, especially in a library, so you've got these big, you know, sheets of glass, which aren't consistent, but I can see how you'd need them. But I also noticed that some of the more conspicuous modern or inconsistent elements are on the elevations facing the house and facing the street. So maybe there's an opportunity to kind of move some of them to less conspicuous parts of the building. And then also, I think if you gave the building more horizontality, you would also, that would help with the massing, because when you've got all these lines going up and down, it makes the building seem bigger. And, you know, if there was more horizontal elements, that might take away some of that kind of perceived size. So just my observations.
Thank you. Commissioner Arthur?
I too have a couple comments regarding the day house. So phase 2 is to come, and I can't take my project management hat off to think about SMART goals. What does phase 2 look like? Is it time-stamped? I appreciate you exploring who or what might be occupying that space. I kind of sit here and think, what is the future of the day house? It seems more separate from the library than connected. And so it's just a simple comment that I'd love a little bit more clarity on, you know, use case and timing, so that it's like a full package that's really connected, it is really well thought out. So that's just a comment that I would love to see a little bit more of. How is this day house going to be used? What are the possibilities? Even if it's not finite, but what, you know, is it a cafe? Is it after-school program? I have no idea. I'm just throwing things out, but I would love to see SMART goals, and many of you know the acronym to, you know, be specific and measurable and, you know, achievable, relevant, and time-stamped. I don't know if it would like sit empty for years, but I just would love to see a little bit more depth in the use case of the day house.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, one more question.
Not a question, a comment. Is that okay?
We will have a brief comment
Okay.
period after. If there are no more questions for the applicant, then we will move to our comment portion of this case. And realizing that we've sort of been giving comments all along, but we will officially close out the questioning, and you can proceed with your comment.
So I have a comment about material, specifically the aluminum plank cladding. I think the faux wood effect is emphasizing that verticality, and I'd like to see some neutral options, alternative finishes for that longboard product. So if we could look at that next time. And if we're commenting on options for accessibility for the day house, I think option 1 seems the best direction to further pursue.
Okay. So just to be clear, option 1 does very little to the day house.
Not knowing future use for the day house, I think the conservative approach
That's
is
great.
best.
That's great, thank you. That's fine.
I'll throw out some comments. This Commissioner Haynes, I do appreciate the 3 studies of the day house. I do think you need to be flexible until you understand who the tenant might be, and that allow that to influence the design direction. I think that the plaza between the library and the day house is a much improved design and does connect or invite people to experience that space, whether taking a book out there to read, or hopefully maybe there will be a coffee shop in the day house and they can have coffee out there. But I think that raising that grade to create that landscaped plaza is working well. I think the location of the entry of the library is improved, and particularly its connection to the day house and that corner as well. I think that's all working. I appreciate the technical complications of the solar panels, and understand, why the massing or the roof configuration is what it is. You heard my comments earlier about trying to break up the wall of facade by pushing back the main portion of the library and allowing the entry and meeting rooms to be proud of the main massing, or at least provide a study for that. Material-wise, I agree there's a practical reality about selecting materials. It has to be long-lasting, relatively maintenance-free. Understand those are costs related in addition to aesthetic. I'm not personally familiar with what I assume is a laminated aluminum plank material, but I noticed coming here today, we have it right out here, I believe, on our soffit of the
Exactly.
building here.
Yeah.
So how old is this building? 2 years old now?
About 5.
Already 5. Boy, does time fly. So I was just curious about, well, how's that going to hold up down at ground level where you have lawnmowers throwing debris at it and salt from the street? But I suppose it's been out there on the market long enough to have been tested on that. I think that your connection from the day house, the able-bodied connection is working. And overall, I think your attempt to relate the height of the library to the day house is working, but I'd like to see if we can push it a little bit further in its massing. Those are my comments. Anybody else? Closing comments? Simple, easy. You got this. So if there's no more comments, we will let you go home,
Thank you.
and we appreciate your coming in today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Let's move on to other business. Are there any commission items anybody wish to speak of? No commission items? Staff items?
This isn't on the agenda, but I'd spoken about it at the work session. I will email everybody a copy of the staff report for tomorrow's budget discussion here at the planning board. If you all would like to tune in, those are also broadcast live, just like your commission meetings are. We are starting at 9:15 in the morning. It's a 3-hour item, but you don't have to stay for all 3 hours unless you want to see everything about the budget. But the planning portion of the discussion should come up pretty early, probably before 10 o'clock, if you'd like to tune into that. And if not, it's recorded, and I can send you that link as well. So that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. And if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.